Hi everyone, Jesse from Powder Chef Coatings in Pittsfield, Mass here. I just wanted to make a little video on the importance of a thorough sandblast and explain to you why I usually have to redo any sandblasting that's done by the customer. I don't expect everybody to know everything about this stuff. That's why I figured I'd just make a video so that you can more easily plan your next job. I'd like to note that any work that you do to degrease and remove old paint from your parts does save me time from stripping in the beginning. However, it doesn't save me from having to blast them again. Most metals, especially old metals, are very porous and they collect a lot of crud over time, especially motorcycle parts that are covered in grease and oil. These contaminants can come to the surface of the metal when it's heated up in the oven. And now, on these freshly sandblasted parts by me, I'll show you exactly why I need to reblast my own work. This is an old Harley frame from the 70s, and as you can imagine, it's had a lot of oil on it over the years. For example, these oil spots weren't there yesterday after I finished sandblasting, but overnight they crept out, and this is even after a pre-bake. This is a set of fork lowers off of that same Harley, and it's a good example of old metal that's porous. We did a pre-bake, and you can see the oil leaking out of the pinholes. So that'll go in for another blast, followed by our old buddy Phil. It can be really difficult to see in the sandblaster while you're blasting. You can see a little pile of grease that I missed right there, and also along that weld. Those have got to go. That's how clean we need all the nooks and crannies to be. No grease caked in there, no oil spots. All your metal should be looking just like that. If you see any discoloration, like that right there, it's got to go back in the blaster. As far as pitting goes, don't worry so much about that. We can fill it after. Just make sure you get all the rust out of those little pinholes. Sandblasting can be a super tedious job, and most of the affordable sandblaster kits nowadays just don't get the job done. It took a few years and a good amount of money to dial in my sandblaster and get it to do what I need it to do. A lot of that investment went to my compressor. Without this equipment, you're going to have a really frustrating time trying to get any paint off of anything. As far as blast profile goes, you don't want to use too coarse of a media and have the metal end up really rough feeling. A good analogy would be if you put 80 grit sandpaper next to 220, you feel the 80 grit, it's going to feel a lot rougher than that 220 grit. In order to get a nice glassy coat and proper adhesion out of powder coat, you want a nice 220 grit feel to the metal. I typically buy 80 to 100 mesh sand and I recycle it back into the blaster, so it ends up breaking down to about 150 to 200 before I get new stuff. A couple more things to note. The parts are kind of a hot potato once they come out of the sandblaster. You don't want to handle them with bare hands, get skin oil on them. If it's summertime and it's humid out, you might get flash rust issues. There's some companies that make anti-flash rust products, but generally I just like to coat the stuff as soon as it comes out of the blaster. Also, if you intend on getting your part powder coated, don't use crushed glass as your media. The glass can embed itself into certain metals, compromise adhesion, make little pops in the finish, all kinds of wacky stuff. I only ever use aluminum oxide or coal slag in a pinch. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.